Quote Retreat by Sandor. One quote, one reflection, one thought that could bring a moment of light and energy to your day. Join me as we take a look at today's quote. The quote is by Aung San Suu Kyi, born 1945. It reads, "If we march the long road to freedom in hatred, what we find at the end is not freedom, but another prison." Let's take a moment together to explore the messages within this quote. Freedom through hatred. It sounds like an oxymoron, right? But this fascinating quote from Aung San Suu Kyi completely transforms how we think about the relationship between resistance and real liberation.
That's such a powerful perspective, especially coming from someone who spent 15 years under house arrest. How did she maintain such clarity during that confinement?
Well, what's really interesting is that her background actually prepared her for this philosophical stance. Her father was General Aung San, a national hero in Myanmar, and instead of letting that legacy push her toward militancy, she developed this incredibly nuanced view of resistance.
The way she combined her Oxford education with a deep connection to Myanmar's struggle is remarkable. What do you think shaped that balanced perspective?
I think her time at the UN was crucial. She saw firsthand how international diplomacy worked, but then made this incredible choice to return to Myanmar in 1988, when the country was in turmoil. Like she knew the risks, but felt compelled to be part of the struggle.
That decision to return really shows how deeply she believed in these principles of non-violent resistance.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how she used her time under house arrest. Instead of letting it fuel bitterness, she turned it into this kind of laboratory for developing ideas about freedom without hatred. It's like she was living proof of her own philosophy.
The way she talks about freedom being compromised by our own attitude really challenges how we think about liberation.
Oh my gosh, yes! And it's so relevant to modern activism. I've seen so many movements start with pure intentions, but then become so focused on defeating opponents that they lose sight of their original purpose. They end up creating new forms of oppression while fighting the old ones.
That's such an important observation. How do you think movement can guard against that kind of transformation?
Well, I believe it starts with constant self-reflection. Like, we need to regularly check our motivations. Are we acting from a place of constructive purpose, or are we just reacting from anger? When she won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991, it wasn't just for what she was fighting for. It was how she was fighting for it.
The practical application must be incredibly challenging though, especially when facing real oppression.
That's where the real power of her message lies. She's not saying we shouldn't feel anger. That's natural when facing injustice. But she's warning against letting that anger become the driving force. It's about channeling those emotions into constructive change rather than destructive hatred.
So it's really about finding that balance between standing firm and maintaining compassion.
Exactly. And I've been experimenting with this in my own life. When I encounter conflict, I try to pause and examine my response. Am I acting in a way that will create positive change, or am I just trying to hurt back? The results are usually much better when I manage to approach conflicts without hatred.
That's fascinating. How these principles can scale from personal interactions to national movements.
Oh, and social media is the perfect example. Think about how many online arguments spiral into toxic exchanges where everyone loses sight of the original issue. We see people fighting for good causes, but doing it in ways that create new forms of hostility and division.
That really puts a new perspective on how we engage with social justice issues online. What would a social media landscape guided by these principles look like?
You know, I imagine it would be more focused on building understanding than scoring points. We could still advocate strongly for what we believe in, but we'd do it in a way that opens doors rather than burns bridges. The goal would be to create change through connection rather than confrontation.
That's such a powerful vision for transforming our public discourse.
And here's what I think is the most important takeaway. This isn't just about political freedom or social justice. It's about how we approach change in all aspects of our lives. When Suu Kyi says we'll find another prison at the end of a hatred-filled journey, she's really warning us about the prisons we build for ourselves through our own approach to conflict and change.
Well, that really brings it full circle. The path to freedom must itself be liberating.
Exactly. And maybe that's the real challenge for all of us, finding ways to fight for what we believe in while holding on to our humanity. Because in the end, what's the point of freedom if we've become the very thing we were fighting against?
With that, we conclude this exciting episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate a like and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Your support truly helps this channel grow. See you again tomorrow. Yours, Sandor.